Alright, so here's the first part. It's not actually strictly speaking just transportation, it's city and transportation. Let's listen to the first question.
Do you like the city you're living in now? Yes, I do. Beijing is a huge metropolis, so it has everything I need. It's a very convenient place to live.
Alright, nothing terrible about that. Remember that first topic is just introductory. So in the first topic of part 1, where I ask you about what you do or where you live, you don't have to give overly long answers, but I mean, if you say it's a convenient place to live, maybe just hint at how it's convenient.
Which cities have you been to recently? I recently went to Hong Kong on holiday with my girlfriend. We spent 3 or 4 days in the city and we ate a lot of the food and did some shopping as well.
It's a little bit weird to say we ate a lot of the food. It sounds like the city now has less food because of you. We did some shopping as well. This question here, which cities have you been to recently? This would be more of, this is not a topic 1 question. This would be under the topic of cities. So here, maybe give a little bit more detail. What did you eat? What kind of shopping did you do?
Do you prefer the city or the countryside? I think because I grew up in the countryside, I still prefer living in rural, quiet areas on the outskirts of towns or cities.
This is pretty good. Outskirts. Some candidates, I wouldn't say many of them, but some candidates do use the word outskirt when they answer questions from the first topic, like where do you live? But very often they use it wrong. I can't remember now exactly what kind of answers I sometimes hear. Very often they say in the outskirts instead of on. So remember, the structure is on the outskirts of something else.
I think that's because the fresh air makes me feel healthier and gives me more chances to go outside, go hiking or jogging and things like that. What kind of cities do you like? I like modern cities with lots of green spaces. I think Tokyo is a really good example because even though it's packed and crowded, there are some wonderfully peaceful and quiet parks which help you block out the noise and the pollution of the city.
Alright, so we've got a lot of adjectives here. Packed, crowded, peaceful, adverb, wonderfully, quiet. Very descriptive language.
Of the city. Which city do you want to go to? I really want to see Shanghai actually. I've seen lots of photos of the famous cityscape across the river, so if I have a chance I would love to go there. I've always been interested in trying some of the local Shanghai.
Just one thing about the word cuisine. A lot of candidates seem to think that if they use the word cuisine, they're automatically going to get a 7 for vocabulary. Cuisine is a word that's very often used. Just because you use this does not mean that you're going to get a good score for vocabulary.
What's the most popular means of transportation in your hometown? Probably buses or cars. Lots of people in Beijing take the bus or public transport because there are lots of routes and it's very well connected. On the outskirts, maybe cars are more useful and bicycles in the city centre are very popular as well.
Notice how he pauses just a little bit between ideas. Well, of course it's because he's a native speaker, but just pay attention to that, those little pauses between ideas. That'll really help your fluency.
Can you compare the advantages of planes and trains?
Wow, this sounds like a part 3 question, kind of.
I suppose planes are much faster than trains, and they've been getting cheaper and cheaper over the years too.
Yeah, there's really maybe not much else you could say except for speed. Notice the grammar. They've been getting. It started in the past. It's still happening now. So we use the present perfect continuous.
Than trains, and they've been getting cheaper and cheaper over the years too. You can pretty much go anywhere with a plane nowadays.
Okay, now a lot of people will say something like you can go anywhere you want to. In English, that's not really how we speak. We don't say you can do anything or you can go anywhere. Look at this phrase here. You can pretty much go anywhere. You can pretty much do anything. You can pretty much, and then you can choose the verb you want. Pretty much. That is such a useful phrase to use.
Trains, on the other hand, are a bit cheaper, and I think they're more relaxing too, and maybe safer.
I don't know why safer, but okay. Okay, now we get back to an obvious part one question. How often do you take buses? So it seems like the questions are kind of mixed.
How often do you take buses? I take the bus almost every day to work, and if I need to go to the city centre on the weekend, I'll take the bus as well. I think it's the best way to get around because...
Get around, that's a phrase you are probably going to want to use in your test.
There are lots of traffic jams in the centre of Beijing, so it's the fastest and easiest way.
Okay. Now when he says traffic jam, I think he really means traffic jam. He doesn't just mean traffic congestion. Please make sure you know the difference between, let's say, heavy traffic, traffic jams, and traffic congestion. They're not the same thing.
Is driving to work popular in your country? I think it's becoming more and more popular, especially because people have higher incomes and China's becoming more prosperous. Buses are quite cramped and slow sometimes, so more and more people are commuting by car.
Wow, this is a short answer, but anyway. This is a very useful word. Instead of saying crowded, use the word cramped. Commuting, it might sound pretty basic to some people, but this is a word that you should definitely learn for the test.
Would you ride a bike to work in the future?
Please note, would. This doesn't mean that you are actually really going to do it. The examiner just wants to know if you consider this to be a possibility.
If I had a nice bike, then why not?
If I had. Okay. So again, he uses the structure if I, and then he uses the past tense to show that this is not real.
It's cheaper, it's just as fast as public transport, and I suppose it's better for me and the environment as well.
So the answers are really good, just again, the length is not there. It's not long enough.
Do you prefer public or private transportation? I think I prefer private transport. Even though it's a bit slower than the bus or the subway, it's more relaxing, comfortable. If it's hot, I have air conditioning, or if it's cold, I can turn on the heater. So I think I prefer my car.
Okay.
Do you think people...
I don't have anything to say about that. I think I would probably say the same.
Will drive more in the future? Absolutely. People in Beijing have more...
He seems to be very focused on just one city. The question, it just says people. Of course, you don't know what people in every country in the world are doing, but maybe you should consider the question from the perspective of people in your whole country instead of just your city.
In Beijing have more disposable income than ever before, so they're going to buy private transport and their own cars instead of taking the bus or the subway. So I think in the future you'll see much more cars on the road.
Much more cars. Much more cars. Let's go with many more cars. Cars are countable.
What will become the most popular means of transport in China?
Okay, if this is a part 1 question, this is a hard question. Also, I don't know why a part 1 question specifically refers to the country by name.
If they're not already the most popular, I think cars will be the vehicle of choice in
This is pretty good. The noun of choice, the vehicle of choice.
the future. Nowadays there are more and more electric cars, and the government provides subsidies for those so they're cheaper.
I do like, let's just go back here. I need to fix this comma. I do like the use of the word subsidies. I can't quite remember if I've ever heard anybody using the word subsidies. People use subsidies in their writing, but not so much in the speaking. So yeah, this is one person's take on cities and transportation. Pronunciation, excellent, of course, native speaker. Very few grammar errors, just a little slip. I just wish he would give longer answers and consider the answers not just from the perspective of Beijing, but maybe the whole of China at the very least. Alright, let's listen to this guy talk on the topic of transportation. The question is...
How did you come here today, and why did you choose that? Well, I got here this morning.
Just one just one thing. They're never going to ask you 2 questions at the same time. How? Why? One question at a time.
Well, I got here this morning by taxi because, well, I did it mainly for the sake of this test. I just wanted to be in a taxi alone so that I could have a little bit speaking practice. I wanted to speak English to myself and also at the same time listen to some English. You know, I have to take this English test. I have to speak English to...
Notice the rising intonation. I have to take this English test. I have to speak English to you. So every time he says thought that's connected to other thoughts, forming kind of like a little chain of unconnected thoughts, to show that it's not finished, he uses this rising intonation.
you, so I kind of wanted to have a little warm-up in the taxi. What forms of transport do you usually use? Well, I use several means of transport, like the bus, the subway, and also from time to time...
The bus, the subway. So this person is not a native speaker, but he's got really good pronunciation.
I just pedal a bike. I mean, cycling is a real...
Pedal, that's a word you don't see very often.
Really wonderful form of transportation because it's a lot of fun, right? It's really relaxing and enjoyable, and in addition to that, it's very good exercise. Is it convenient to take the bus in your city? Yeah, totally. It's very convenient because there are so many, I mean, there are hundreds of bus routes everywhere in the city, and you have a lot of buses running around.
He says here you have a lot of buses running around. I think this is a very useful phrase to use. People can run around, buses can run around, cars can run around.
My neighborhood, not only my neighborhood, just everywhere. No matter where you are, no matter where you want to go, you can hop on a bus and...
Hop on a bus. Hop's a good word to use. Of course, you can also hop off a bus.
just get to your destination.
Alright, so just a few things. Maybe you've noticed this pattern in his answers. So he says yes twice. He says totally, and then he says it's very convenient. He gives a reason. There are so many buses. Then he gives examples of just how many buses there are. There are hundreds running around the neighborhood and the city. And then he goes on, and he doesn't just say, well, people can take a bus. A lot of people might say, yeah, there are lots of buses, and you can take a bus to anywhere. I hear that phrase, to anywhere, so many times. But he doesn't just say, yeah, you can take a bus to anywhere. He says, no matter where you want to go to, you can hop on a bus. and get to your destination. So much better than just saying get to anywhere. And actually, saying get to anywhere is not the right way to express your ideas.
Is driving popular in your country? Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, driving has been increasingly popular over the years.
So yes, yes. The short yes, the long yes. That seems to be the way he answers all the questions.
For the years. This is mainly because Chinese our standard of living has been rising rapidly, so more and more people can afford to buy their own cars. And this is pretty sad because now wherever you are, you're always caught up in traffic.
Aha. So instead of saying stuck in traffic, he's saying caught up in traffic.
Just due to the huge number of cars on the street.
Actually, I think this should be the, right? He didn't say that. The huge number of cars on the street. Alright. So, I think this is an excellent example of how to answer the questions. Really good. Okay, so here is the same guy doing the same question, but he's giving a different response. So I'm just going to let this run, and then I will give my thoughts on his response.
How did you come here today, and why did you choose that? Well, I came here by subway. I chose it because, well, subway is my favorite mode of transport. I take it every single day, no matter where I go. I just go to the nearest subway station, get on it, and I really like this form of transport mainly because I think it's the most reliable means of transport because I never have to worry about being caught up in a big traffic jam. The traffic is a huge problem in my hometown. Sometimes if I take the bus or the taxi, I'm always clogged up in traffic, so that's a huge problem, and that's why most of the time I just take the subway. Is it convenient to take a bus in your city? Yeah, I'd say it's extremely convenient. Well, public transportation is very advanced in my hometown. We have so many bus lines, I guess there are hundreds of buses running around on the streets, everywhere, to every corner of the city. So if you want to take the bus, you just walk for about 200, 300 meters. Trust me, you will find a bus stop. Is driving popular in your country? Oh, sure. It's so popular that there are like millions of vehicles on the streets running around in Beijing. I mean, we have a huge population here, right? We have about 24 million people, and every day there are 5 million vehicles on the roads. And that definitely shows how popular driving is. People really enjoy it, mainly because it's comfortable and it's convenient. You don't have to wait for a bus or wait for a subway train. But it does lead to many problems, like traffic congestion and air pollution. How did you come here today, and why did you choose that? Well, I came here by subway. I chose it because, well, subway is my favorite mode of transport. I take it every single day, no matter where I go. I just go to the nearest subway station, get on it, and I really like this form.
Notice his really good rhythm, the way he talks, pauses at the right places.
Form of transport mainly because I think it's the most reliable means of transport because I never have to worry about being caught up in a big traffic jam.
I think he used this phrase before, but here we have caught up in a traffic jam again.
Traffic jam. The traffic is a huge problem in my hometown. Sometimes if I take the bus or the taxi, I'm always...
Just one thing, I'm not sure why he says if we take the bus or the taxi. How about we change this to because you're not talking about... well, I guess for bus, maybe you always take the same bus, then it would be the bus. But surely you don't always take the same taxi, so it's got to be a taxi.
Or the taxi, I'm always clogged up in traffic. So
okay, so this is a little bit weird here, because you cannot be clogged up. Unless you ate some food and you don't go to the bathroom, something like that. So the streets can be clogged up, but usually we would say the streets are very... Well, you could say the streets are jammed if you want to sound more colloquial, or you could say the streets are really congested. And also, this would be with, not in. If you're going to use clogged up, it's clogged up with something. But if people are clogged up, it means there's something in your body preventing you from going to the bathroom, basically. I don't think that's what he's talking about, though.
So that's a huge problem, and that's why most of the time I just take the subway. Is it convenient to take a bus in your city? Yeah, I'd say it's extremely convenient. Well, public transportation is very advanced in my hometown. We have so many bus lines, I guess there are hundreds of buses running around on the streets, everywhere, to every corner of the city. So if you want to take the bus...
I do like this. Instead of saying everywhere, he says to every corner of the city, even though cities literally don't have corners. Still, it's a good figure of speech.
Bus, you just walk for about 200, 300 meters. Trust me, you will find a bus stop. Is driving popular in your country? Oh, sure. It's so popular that there are like millions of vehicles on the streets running around in Beijing. I mean...
Okay, here we have running around again. Okay, let's not overdo the running around. I do want to say something about the word like. See how he uses this, and also see how he uses right, although he does use right quite a bit. Maybe that's just the way he speaks.
I mean, we have a huge population here, right? We have about 24 million people, and every day there are 5 million vehicles on the roads, and that definitely shows how popular driving is. People really enjoy it, mainly because it's comfortable and it's convenient. You don't have to wait for a bus or wait for a subway train. But it does...
Okay, it's a very mature answer, because he details both sides. He talked about the pluses, and now he goes on to talk about the negatives. Because he speaks quite fast, he can do this. He can discuss the issue from two perspectives. If you're a slow speaker, maybe this is not the best thing to do, because the examiner might just stop you because you're spending too much time on one question.
But it does lead to many problems, like traffic congestion and air pollution.
Such a good answer. I'm including 2 more samples. I don't have really any comments on these, really, because they're both scripted, but there's some good vocabulary, so maybe you can learn something from those.
I'd like to move on and talk about transport. What's the best way to get around your city?
I live in quite a small town, so it's very easy to get around. You can walk or cycle to a lot of places, although some roads are a bit dangerous for bikes. There are buses, which are fairly reliable, but they're not the fastest way to get around. Finally, you can take a taxi or an Uber if you want to get somewhere fast, and you don't mind paying a bit extra.
All right. And have you ever learned to drive?
Yes, I learned in the UK as soon as I was old enough, although I have to say I haven't driven for several years. I'm not sure if you'd want to get in the car with me, but I guess I'd pick it up again quite quickly. There's just not much point in having a car where I am now, because I can walk or ride my bike around town and take public transport if I want to go somewhere else for the weekend or whatever.
I see. Do you think everybody should learn to drive?
That's a strange idea. I think it's up to each person to decide. It can be very useful in some places. For example, where I grew up in the UK, it's a rural area, and if you don't have a car, you're pretty isolated. If you live somewhere like that, you should probably learn to drive, but it's still a choice, right?
Do you like to travel in your holidays or free time? Why? Yes, I do, because I can learn a great deal from traveling, such as learning about different cultures and ways of life, as well as different languages. If I travel abroad, of course. Travel can help me become a more well-rounded person.
What kinds of places do Chinese people like to visit? Let me think. Well, places which have a lot of natural scenery are definitely very popular travel destinations, because a lot of people want to get away from city life for a bit. And as well as this, I'd say other places that Chinese people like to go to are those which have some kinds of unique attraction, like the Great Wall, for example, and those which are good for shopping, like Hong Kong.
Have you ever been on a long trip? If yes, say where you went. Yes, I have. I went to Australia last year. The long-haul flight was particularly uncomfortable. I had very little leg space, and it was really difficult getting to sleep. However, it was worthy. I saw things that I wouldn't normally see in China. For example, I saw clownfish when I was diving in Great Barrier Reef.
Do you prefer traveling alone or with friends? I prefer traveling alone because I can do what I want, without having to ask for approval from anyone else. So basically, I can be really flexible with my plans.